I went a different path. Some of the most successful people I've ever met in this industry.
Did you need a college degree to get that first entry into the industry?
I think the key is actually having the vision. The ability to understand, the ability to communicate, but the drive that's required, instead of just going home at 7 p.m. or 6 p.m. and shutting off, it's, okay, how do I get to the next place?
Where do you learn about all this stuff? Is it through books, podcasts? How do you actually go about learning?
All Twitter. No, I was just kidding.
All right. Hey, guys. So we've got a very special guest here. We have Morgan. Morgan, we're so excited to have you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What did you do? You're a man of many interests.
So I grew up in a small town in British Columbia, a farming town. And by the age of 24, I was living on the other half of the world in the other half Papua New Guinea, working for a massive mining company, chasing those dreams of gold and copper and becoming, the engineering and running all the crews and the projects and then transition through life and through different mining projects and grain and then the tech space, and became a bit of an entrepreneur and now running a gold company that has a near-term asset to be built, one of the top 3 assets in Canada. I love physical gold. I love physical commodities, but what I really like is the intersection of tech and commodities. So, I'm a bit of an anomaly in that sense.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And so how did you make that initial leap? Was it during high school, college? Like, what was that first entry step? What did that look like? What was that sort of breakthrough?
It's funny. I actually started as a boots on the ground person on the mine sites. Like, I started in the electrical and automation side, like just wiring and building and doing automation projects, and saw this need of the engineers and the trades and the executives. And I was like, I think I can fill that. And then slowly worked my way up. And again, by the age of 24, working for a major overseas, and then amplifying from there and just honing in skills. Never actually, for the first, I would say 4 years, which is kind of sounds counterintuitive to what every YouTube person will ever tell you in the world, is I never chased the money. I chased experience because I know where I wanted to get to. I wanted to be a president or a CEO of a mining company one day. And as I came through that, I realized in my mid 30s that, about 2 years ago, that the tech space, the crypto space, and the real gold mining space actually have a bigger intersection than people give it.
Yeah, that's absolutely sounds like an interesting path. And I'm curious, like, did you need a college degree to get that first entry into the industry?
I mean, what's air quote need? Look, it helps for sure having a university degree. I went a different path. I think that some of the most successful people I've ever met in this industry decided to go in, get the experience, and then just work their way up. I think the key is actually having the vision, the ability to understand, the ability to communicate, but the drive that's required. Instead of just going home at 7 p.m. or 6 p.m. and shutting off, it's, okay, how do I get to the next place? How do I amp up? Like, if you look at the Sean Rusens of the world and the Cisco Mining, he's started billions of dollars. They just sold one of their companies for $2.3 billion, and he started as a driller. Like,
yeah,
you go. So ideally, you want to be an engineer, you're probably going to need a degree. You want to start a business and build a platform, I think it's just a sheer amount of effort and surround yourself with the right people.
Well, it sounds like you had a really good mindset from an early age, and you talk about drive. What was some of that drive to go get the experience? Like, how did you learn that? Because I think a lot of people don't have that, especially, I know I definitely was like, I had a bit of that one in my 20s, but it was, it was like an 80-20 type of thing where sometimes I was driven and motivated, but sometimes I would veer off.
Well, that's what they call it, the 20s, right? They're only 20% want to be there. The other 80%'s the fun. Like, I grew up in a small town in the backcountry. I did 5 sports growing up, so I moved into town. And, I learned at a young age that watching my dad and my uncle and all them work. I learned that I don't want to do it that way. And that in order to not do it that way, I'm going to have to work harder, and I'm going to have to work in a different way than they did. And I would say the same. In my 20s, I was out to get experience, but I didn't have that kind of formed path. And that's the part where you have to get mentors and people to come in and say, like, hey, Morgan, or hey, Joe, or whatever your name is, do you want what do you want to do? How do you want to get there? Because people have done it. Like, there's probably no job in this world that someone hasn't got to through a path. There are paths to do it. But in that way, I just didn't want to be broke. Like, we grew up not, until I moved in with my dad, we didn't have a lot. And I was like, I never want to be there again.
That's great. Yeah, I think it seems like, that can be a huge drive for a lot of people's. And it seems like you had the right approach to it. And you mentioned having mentors. And I've noticed from my experience, it's absolutely essential, especially if you go down the entrepreneurial route, to find mentors. What are some of the things that you've seen from maybe being a mentor yourself or finding some of your early on mentors?
It's funny. I would say some of the early mentors that I have are no longer mentors, because you change your rotation of people, right? I like to say, you upgrade the people you're around, you upgrade the experience, you kind of do that leapfrog, that ladder, right? I have mentors right now, like Frank Juster is a good example. Just, billionaires, done this over and over and over again. I've also got mentors in the current company. Like, I'm the president of a company called NexGold. It's a gold mining company. The CEO is a 35, 40-year mine builder, right? I look at him as a mentor. I look at the chairman of the board, who's 74 years old and has built mines all around the world. Again, you can get to these president CEO levels. There's still mentors out there. So the way I look at a mentor is someone that you're going to learn some skills from, that you have a time frame with, and eventually, there's a difference. You may become the mentor. I mean, not Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi style, but
Yeah, no, I definitely think that is like such an important thing, but also it seems like you had a lot of drive and passion for this. And I'm sure a lot of mentors gravitated to you. And I think that's, from what I've seen, has been such an essential thing is, you have to prove yourself before anybody's going to take interest in you. Have you found something similar to that approach with, sort of attracting mentorship?
Yeah, look, 100%. I mean, I started when I was 24, when I went to Indonesia. The interview process was a week on site. They flew you over there. You didn't get paid. They're like, we're going to put you up. And then you go through this week-long interview process. And it is all like, show me mentality. Prove. Like, we're going to give you tasks. You're going to do them. We're going to give you tasks. Go run that project. How would you change that? I think there's two fundamentals to getting and working with a mentor. And I do mentorship myself as well. And I don't necessarily look for how much they've done already. I look for how much potential they have. Now, when you're mentoring someone that's 20, they're not going to have the same amount of drive and knowledge as someone that's 35 or 40 that's been in it for a while, right? So it's really about the willingness to ask questions, to listen, but also to challenge, right? As a mentee, one of my things is I like to challenge my mentors, be like, hey, I like how you think about that, but could we think about it this way? And that's how you grow, right? Just like a conversation. Sometimes they just look at you and go, be quiet and just do it this way. But those are great things. The quality of mentor is really important too.
Yeah. And it sounds like you probably learned a lot of that. You played 5 sports. I also noticed that. Like, my first mentors were coaches, and they were teaching me how to be disciplined, how to show up, how to push myself further than I've ever done. Did you find some sort of correlation with your past coaches and playing sports with kind of being competitive?
Yeah, I love the sport analog. I think that there's a lot of, how do I put this? There is a lot to be learned from being a part of a team, but also pushing yourself personally. Like, I did track and field where, you're surrounded by a team, but I did hammer throw, and that's a very personal growth, right? I did martial arts, and there's a certain growth there as a team, but again, personally. So I think when you say, oh, just being a part of a team is an important part, no, I think that dynamic of how you grow through trial, right? That the key that I put in my entire life, and if you ask my group of friends, they're like, you're the master of reinvention, because you have just failed and got back up and be like, okay, that one's done, next one. And that's the thing you learn, right? I'm sure you learned that too when you were doing sports. Like, you lose a game and, half the people are down and out, and you're like, no, we're on to the next one, guys. Let's change it up.
I think that's the biggest, like, that's such a good analogy is, like, imagine you played one basketball game and you lost and then you gave up. Like, kind of that same mentality with business. It's like happening every day over weeks and months and years. So yeah, I think that's the right mindset to have. So I guess, how did you go from this going to Indonesia, not getting paid, to where you're at now? Can you kind of fill the gap there?
Oh yeah, that's an interesting one. So I just took jobs. People are like, it was in 2015, I got interviewed, or I got asked to go look at a project in Africa, in Ghana. And I mean, in the middle of nowhere in the jungle. And all my friends, I'm showing them pictures and they're like, are you insane? Like, do you have any idea where you're going? I'm like, absolutely not, but I'm going to do it. And they're like, are you okay, go ahead. And then I moved there and I met a mentor of mine there, and that expanded. But like, I think the path is to continually look for experience, look for general. I like saying, be a generalist or be a specialist, right? You want to be a specialist, you're going to get paid well, you're going to make a good income, you're going to be a part of a bigger organization. But generally, like for me, anyways, how it works is I like to know enough about every subject to call BS. That's truly like how I created my career, is like know enough about accounting that the accountants don't smack me over the head, but for the most time they look at me like I know a little bit, that kind of stuff. But yeah, to bridge that gap was interesting because I went from the mining space and then I went into the metallurgical steel space. But again, a project is a project, right? The fundamentals for how to run them, all that. I just wanted the knowledge. I wanted to understand different aspects of different industries. I worked in the grain space, working for a Saudi company, building grain terminals in Canada for them. I wasn't physically building them, but I was a part of the senior team. And I wanted to understand the logistics pipeline. So again, this like innate curiosity for knowledge. Like, you don't need to get a degree in psychology to understand psychology. Pick up a book, read, talk to some people. Same idea, right? You can go out and get all these different experiences, but it's how they accumulate at the end. And that's kind of what led me into the capital markets. And I would say, my first time ever being really broke was in the capital markets. And the first time I made money was in the capital markets, in that sense. But it's tough to come from nothing and work all the way up and then see it all go away, and then work all the way up and see it all go away. And then you get higher highs and higher lows, right? It's almost like a stock chart, because you get more knowledge every time.
Yeah, you're learning from the mistakes and making sure that those don't happen as much, right?
Or you just do them differently.
Yeah. So Morgan, I guess present time, can you give us a little bit of insight? What's the day-to-day like? What's your main focuses on everything?
Yeah, look, I the president of a gold mining company called NexGold. Stock ticker is NEXG on the TSXV. And, I accumulate all that experience in building and working projects. What really drew me to this company, and what I think draws a lot of the talent in the company, is that you have a gold company that has a buildable mine. When you're talking gold in the industry and mining, you go through all these different phases of exploration and capital loss and capital gain. And then you get to this intrinsic phase of, okay, now we need a team to build it. Do we have permits? We have all those. We're at what's called at the bottom of the curve. So right when you get to the bottom, you get that nice rebound because you get into that mine build where we'll be a low cost producer, low CapEx comparatively across the industry. At $2,300 gold, it's over $1 billion net present value. It will cash flow billions of dollars over its life after tax. So I like looking at this as a business. I think we're in a great business. We can benefit communities. We can create jobs. We can make investors, a lot of money doing it, but we can cash flow. And that's what I liked about NexGold. I see it when we really put it all together with a couple different companies. You have a team that can build mines. You have people like Frank Juster behind it, which is a legend in the space that's built, Gold Corp that was taken out of $40 billion-ish. You've got massive talent and you've got the right investor base. It's only a matter of time before these things. And with gold going the way it is, I'm like, what a great place to be. So that's my day to day, looking at exploration, mergers and acquisitions, finance, looking at how we're going to build this thing over the next, shovels in the ground in 16, 17 months, which in the mining space is very fast. And I'm talking physical gold mining, not digital currency mining. But both I think are intrinsically tied together.
Yeah, it's fascinating space. I think there's probably like a lot of people that don't fully understand where all the gold comes from. So could you give us a little bit of insight for those people who don't fully understand the industry? How does it work, or what are some things that are maybe a little bit less known to the average person?
Yeah, look, there's multiple processes in finding the gold. The first one is you need the geologist. You get out there, you do all the groundwork where they're poking holes and taking samples, and then you raise a whole bunch of money and you drill, and then you create something called a resource model over time. And that can happen over a year, it can happen over 10 years. It depends on the markets, and that resource model really dictates what kind of mine you're going to build. Underground, is it open pit? What process are you using? That takes a very long time often to get there. Sometimes you get bought out before you get there. Sometimes you get to this point and you get to the mine build and you get bought out, or you create something bigger. So that process happens, and then you got all the engineering and permitting studies that take years and years and years. And again, back to why like NexGold, the asset is because it's federally permitted, because it's at a point where it's gone through all of that value. All of that money's been sunk into it. Now the way is put money into build, pull money out. So when you look at a gold mine, you're digging up dirt, there's gold in it, you process it, you sell. I'm really simplifying here, and all my mining people that watch this are going to be like, what an idiot. There's way more process to it than that. Yeah, there is, but simplify it, find it, dig it up, obviously in an ethically and responsible way, and then sell it and make profit. It's like building chairs, The wood comes out of the forest, you manufacture the chair, you sell the chair to the customer. Similar idea. It's a commodity-based business.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of nuances to it, but I guess like, again, not everyone's in the industry, but I think a lot of people are probably wondering is like, what is the big use case for gold? Because it's not just for, shining and looking pretty. There are a lot of use cases for it in technology and other places. So I'd be curious to know what are those big use cases for gold?
Well, look, traditionally gold has been a currency hedge, right? I mean, for the last, 4,000 years or 6,000 years, we've mined it. Silver and gold, especially gold, has been the high valued commodity of trade. And until the 80s, it was really something we hedged currency to. And you've seen that disassociation. So you have a currency side of it. You have the technology side. There used to be a lot of gold in CPUs, microchips. There's still gold in microchips because it's a great conductor. One of the best, actually. If we can make power lines out of gold, that'd be great, but it might get expensive. But there not only is that, there is the scarcity effect of it, which is a lot of those high-grade gold mines have started to go away, which means production's going to start going down. You're seeing it in the major companies, and you're seeing people like BRICS going, we want more gold. China want more gold. Because now you're seeing a re-hedging happen. The US dollar is doing what it's doing, printed trillions of dollars and tens of trillions of dollars. And people are going, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to level this out? Let's go back, tried, tested, and true. So I even think the use case, not just from an industrial standpoint, but from an actual society standpoint and a currency standpoint, are even greater than they used to.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I guess like as far as NexGold, what are some of like, walk us through like what's the next 6 months, year? What's kind of the bigger vision after that?
What's the next steps?
Yes.
6 months. Look, so in the mining space, you have something called a feasibility study, which is really what you can bank on and then finance your mine build off of. That's coming out in Q1 of 2025. So within the next 6 months-ish. You have exploration, which we have our resource defined. Now we have 65 kilometers of area that is highly underexplored along kind of a strike. So you have 2 different open pits that will be built, and there's all these areas in between that we can find more of those. So we're like, hey, well, let's go find those. So we're drilling, you're going to get results from that, which means you get news flow. We're going to look at how we're expanding the company and growing as an organization and as a business. That could be M&A. That could be adding other projects in to grow the profile, right? We'll be producing 100,000+ ounces a year. And at $2,500 gold, I think you can do the math pretty quick. That's, $2.5 billion a year. And then you take off the costs and all that, you could be cash flowing hundreds and hundreds of millions probably at 2,500, we're cash flowing $400 million a year. If you think about it in the form of a tech company, if a tech company was free cash flowing $400 million a year, it would be a $20 billion company. But just because we're labeled the mining industry, it doesn't. But hey, gold tends to hold pretty steady, right?
Yeah, no, that's a great sort of analogy you have there. And I'm curious, like, where can you disclose kind of the approximate area that you're mining? Is that like public data?
Yeah, it's all public. It's Dryden, Ontario, so Northwest Ontario. We're about 10 kilometers out of the city on the Trans-Canada Highway, which means we have infrastructure going right through our project. We have accommodations nearby. We have all the requirements to build to make it easy to build on our property. So Northwest Ontario, near the Manitoba border, probably 3.5, 4 hour drive from Winnipeg. You can fly into Winnipeg or Dryden. Well, sometimes Dryden. But you're in a district that has mines within 500 kilometers around it. You've got the wood industry there. They've got a pulp and paper mill. So you're very industrialized in that area, which is a good thing. We're not in the middle of absolute nowhere. We're not have to use Hercules airplanes and helicopters, which I've done in the Arctic, is a lot of fun. But you don't have to do that here. It's a really good spot to be. Plus, you have the support of the federal government. We just signed agreements with the First Nations in the area, or with one of the First Nations. So on the exploration side. So again, things are starting to look up for this space. Gold at $2,500, and everyone's sitting there going, what price does it need to get you before people come into the equities? And I'm going, at $2,500 gold, we're making more money than most companies out there when we go into production. I like that position.
Yeah, it sounds like a powerful spot to be in. And I guess if people want to get some exposure to it, I think there's that common expression, be the one selling the shovels. And that's kind of like your guys' position, right? You're not just buying gold. You're the ones producing it, right? Or mining it. So how can people get some exposure to that, right? Is that buying stocks, buying gold directly? What do you suggest?
Yeah. So look, when you talk about buying gold directly, you get a margin, right? You get, you buy it at 2,400, you sell it at 26, right? The biggest leverage to gold price is generally a stock, obviously I'm talking about ours, but as a stock like ours or ours, where you have that we're going into construction, we can make more discoveries, we can start producing, we'll produce at about $1,030 US, gold's at 2,500. That should let you kind of do the math on how big that could be. Now you get margin, you get leverage, you get liquidity from it. So, if you're looking at buying something, you want to buy a stock that has a team that can build something. We have that, probably 150 years of experience on our team more. You want a project that is real, that has near permitted or is permitted, that has, 1 to 3 million minimum ounces in it. We have that. Good jurisdiction. You want to start, stacking the check marks, stacking the yeses. So for our stock, you'd buy it on the TSX Venture under NEXG or NexG. We're called NexGold, NexG. And you really want to look for these types of opportunities that have leverage. Can they leverage exploration? Can they leverage the gold price? We're highly leveraged to both. So we're just getting started. So things are starting to look up.
Yeah, it sounds like a fascinating sort of investment strategy to kind of go down the mining industry. And again, I think it sounds like you guys have all of those things that would be, important for anybody to really dig in. But you have to do your research. But it sounds like you guys definitely have a great project going. Is there anything else that you want to share about kind of yourself, NexGold, anything else?
I'll tell you the website, and I'll share a little more about a little background here. But the website's www.nexgold.com. As someone with a bit of a diverse background, I think you and I were talking before, I co-own or co-founded a technology company called StreamX. We're a fintech company hybriding the real world asset in the crypto space. And I went into this because I saw what was happening in the mining space and in the crypto space. And I'm like, well, there's a hybrid here, right? This is why, again, digital gold. We call it digital gold for a reason. Email for a reason, right? Similarities. There's investment philosophy similarities. I think as an entrepreneur and as someone that has had amazing mentors and sometimes not great mentors, I look at this and I go, I think you're in two of the greatest industries coming into this next section. You have AI, cybersecurity, which, there's companies like Plurilock, which I really like. One of our friends obviously is in that one. NexGold, I like companies that have growth strategy, that they have a team, they have growth strategy. You're starting to see that a lot with the gold companies. I'm seeing that now in the more concentrated fintech hybridization space. And I'm seeing that in the cybersecurity and AI space. So you're seeing companies go through the roof and starting to develop. I think it's the most fascinating time to live. I mean, I want to be on Mars in about 10 years. So Elon better hurry up and get us there. Maybe there's some gold up there.
Well, Morgan, you seem so well educated on a lot of different areas. Like, where do you learn about all this stuff? Is it through books, podcasts? Like, I know you're getting a lot of stuff hands-on. Like, you seem just like you're a wealth of knowledge. Like, how do you actually go about learning?
All Twitter. No, I was just kidding. Yeah, no. Podcasts and books for sure. Just honestly talking to people, going to someone that has a ton of experience in that area and listening. I know I'm doing a lot of talking here, and my friends would always say I talk a lot, but when you meet someone that has experience in something, ask them questions, and get them engaged. Hey, everyone always asks, like, how much money do you make, and what was your biggest success? I always like to start with, what was your biggest failure, and how did you come back from that? Because that's where you're going to learn who they are. That's where you're going to learn their secrets.
Well, let's use your own advice here on your Morgan. What was your biggest failure, and what did you learn from it?
Divorce and all the fun stuff, life failures. When I first started at Freeport in Indonesia, you're coming there as a 24-year-old, rah, and we've got a certain way of doing things. There's nothing like getting beat down by not your idea. So what I learned is it's really easy to come up with something and be like, look, it's great, it's awesome. And then nobody cares because you're 24, or like in that culture or in other cultures, and especially in teams, ideas become more powerful when they're the team's idea, right? And that was a failure. I mean, I failed on that so many times where you're just pushing something through, and I still learn about it today. You push something through and it completely falls apart because you went at it with the wrong approach. I think that was one of my biggest learning experiences, is how to collaborate. And if you ask some of my, I'm sure, teammates now, they'll probably tell you to interrupt them a bunch, but I really like that idea of collaboration through teamwork. I mean, I'm sure if you talk to Elon or you talk to Steve Jobs before he passed away, they rule and they have ideas, but they're only as good as the people behind them, right? And that's something I learned the hard way. I tried to do things all myself and it fell apart over and over and over. And, same like, it's almost like being married, right? If you're trying to go through and learn how to communicate and you're not communicating well, get help with it, right? So they're all similar skill sets. So that was one failure. I think not understanding an industry or a way to work through it when I joined the capital markets and going headstrong into it is, again, another failure. I am very driven, motivated. Sometimes you got to pare that back, listen, and then move forward. And I learned it the hard way.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Again, like I know doing multiple businesses, you have failures, but I think at some point you don't necessarily see it as that. It's like, hey, here's a learning experience, right? Here's what I'm going to learn from. And it's only a failure if you don't actually course correct, or you don't actually like learn and adjust accordingly. Other than that, it's just sometimes it can be an expensive sort of learning experience. So I think that's a good way to internalize it. But anything else, Morgan, that you would like to kind of wrap things up here? Anything else that you'd like to share?
No, that's been great. I really appreciate the conversation. Like, I think, I'm 39 now. And I do mentor young people coming through industry. Doesn't matter the industry necessarily, but I really encourage anyone, whether you're interested in the mining space or you're interested in the engineering, the technology space, just reach out to these leaders in the space. You'd be surprised at how happy they are to talk to you. I mean, sometimes they're going to tell you to pound sand, but and they're busy. But for the most part, a lot of people that have had success want to share. Some of my biggest mentors, even currently, some of the conversations are solely around failure, which now I reframe into opportunity. So keep that in your mind. Every failure is an opportunity to grow and expand.
Yeah, I definitely think there's something to that. And I think a lot of people, especially when they're getting started, finding a mentor can really change your whole path. It can really accelerate your path. But I also like to talk about coaching. And I'm curious if you've hired coaches directly where it's like kind of a mentorship, but it's a little bit more transactional, right? Where it's like, I give you money and you save me years of time. And I've had some of my biggest growth through finding those people. It's like they've done what I want to achieve for themselves. They've done it for others. And now you can pay them money to do what you want to achieve, right? Have you had success with that as well?
I've only recently started to do that. It's a really good point, learning from people like you to do it. Yeah, no, it's absolutely like sometimes it's $500. Sometimes it's a token amount, but it's transactional because you're transacting. Here's some money. Here's what I want to learn. You're right. Saved me years. I mean, one of our mutual friends, I consider him a friend and a business partner, but he's been hyper successful. And I'm like, how did you do that? And he's always like more pointed. What do you mean? How did I do it? What part do you want to learn about? Like, okay, I want to learn about X, in the capital markets. How did you make these relationships? And, when someone just tells you hard work, well, okay, hard work's one thing, but like how? Like, what were the keys? And I think the one thing he's always said to me is, and others, is to like literally just pick up the phone or walk in somewhere. Just actually show up, because that shocks people more than you know.
Yeah, I'm always shocked by how many people can't show up. And I have this kind of expression, and it's like, and I was just raised this way. I was like, if you're not 15 minutes early, you're late. And I think my approach is show up 15 minutes early, use that 10 to 15 minutes early to prep for whatever you're doing. So that way you're coming in prepared with the right mindset. And that sort of approach, I think, is going to separate you from 99.9% of people if you just do that. And so I think there's a lot to that of showing up on time, prepared with the right mindset will separate you from everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, read the book Atomic Habits. It's not far off from what you should be doing. Wake up at 5:30, have discipline, make your bed. I mean, it sounds so simple. Like, I have a 6-year-old son, and he makes his bed now every morning. He comes into my room. He's like, Dad, bed's made. And you know what? He's 6 and he wants to make his own breakfast now. And I'm like, my little boy's going to be in university soon. Yeah.
Well, I think there's so little in life that you can control, right? There's so many things, but if you really hone down on a routine, you can control that. You can get those early wins in the day, and you can start each day off with a few wins, right?
It's all a pure mindset. I remember, it was probably 4 days ago, I was sitting on my patio, glass of wine, cigar in hand, looked up, and I was just like, wow, am I thankful for this day? And it was just because we had a small win at work. And I was just thankful. Like, everything, conversations you have, you can learn from everything. It's amazing. Everyone has a different experience. You got to keep that in mind, right? Different thing going on in their life. But you're right. The small wins really make the big one.
Oh, yeah. So, Morgan, appreciate your time here. Is there anything else, like if people want to follow you on LinkedIn, are you active on social or anything, or is it best to just go to the NexGold website?
Yeah, my X handle is M Lekstrom. I know it's really generic. MLEKSTROM. That's my last name, so you can find me on the internet everywhere. Morgan Lekstrom. I have LinkedIn. I have Instagram. It's literally the same. So yeah, I was going to be like Gold Guy 27 or something like that.
Well, appreciate your time, Morgan. And again, thanks so much for coming on here and sharing a little insights about your journey.
Thanks. Appreciate it.